Hello and welcome to YouTube Mall Builders Tuesday night show. Tonight is Weathering Workbench to Mainline with Mr. Ralph Renzetti. Before we get to the show, just want to say go to YouTubeMallBuilders.com. There you can check on the show schedules. We have the Tuesday and Wednesday shows at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. Then the Thursday show will be at 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. And also be sure and click on the eMag to sign up for email notification when it comes out. The next issue will be out next month, somewhere around the middle of the month approximately. So be sure and get signed up so you get notified when it comes out. And now let me do a little hocus pocus here, and we'll hand it off to Ralph, and it's all yours, Ralph.
Hey, hello everybody for Canadian Boxing Day, December 26th. I hope that you had a very good Christmas and that you got everything you were looking for Christmas. I hope that I can give you something more. I thought tonight I would do something a little bit different since it is weathering. It may not be what you're planning on, but it is definitely weathering, and this applies to everything, what I'm going to show you. There are two forms of weathering that you can do if you're doing a paint job from the beginning. There's what they call a salt technique and a hairspray technique. And done on plastic, they both work excellent. So, with the salt technique, I take, I went out and got some, I guess it's coarse gray sea salt. Doesn't really matter what kind it is. Kosher salt's good because it's smaller granules. Rock salt that you put on roadways and so on, that works well too. The stuff that I have comes in a bag like that, and they're probably about a 1/16 of an inch, maybe a little bit more variation. And what I do is I put it on a tile, a ceramic tile, and I sort of flatten out some of the granules. And where the heck did my salt jar go? There it is. And I use the window washer from my car. So there's my salt, broken up pretty well. I don't want it real fine because when it gets wet, the small stuff dissolves, and you're not going to get anything from that. It's the larger granules that are going to give you this technique. So that said, I'm going to show you some pictures of what it looks like when it's done. So, and then I'll show you how to do it. Okay. Some of you may have seen this in the YouTube Model Builders eMag. This is the Volkswagen bus that I did. And there are products out there. This one here is called chipping effects or scratch effects. And this is what you would use. I used a hairspray on the bottom of this, but I find I get better results with the hairspray. I'm not sold on that product completely yet. It does work, and it works every time, but I haven't mastered it yet, so I stick to my hairspray. On the top, this is the salt technique. So what you end up doing is you paint the top of the bus or whatever you're working on. You paint the surface with multicolors of brown or rust. Then you spritz it with a water bottle of window washer from your car, and you sprinkle the salt on where you want to see the rust. And when that's dry, then you paint on your top coat, which in this case was white. When that's dry, then you start rubbing off the salt and then coming back at it with an old toothbrush and just rubbing it to get all the salt out. And that's what it looks like when it's done. Excuse me. I have a cold, so I may have to turn my mic off once in a while. I mean, I can tell you all kinds of stuff about this van because this was an experiment for me, and I did all kinds of things with it. I mean, you can take a Dremel tool and cut out the old rust spots if you want. Like here, I cut the floor out with the Dremel tool. I cut the floor out here with the Dremel tool. I did the same on the seat, and then I covered it with masking tape and painted the masking tape silver to look like duct tape. And this is the scratching that you get with the hairspray. And all I used was a toothpick to do it. I did the same with this little scooter. And just rusted the motor. I painted it first brown, and then I put the same green color on it, and I very lightly scratched at it after I had like you put the coat of hairspray on the rust color and then painted green. And then once you've got your colors basic and you've got your scratches and streaks and the rust on the roof the way you want it, then you can go back with some rust powders or the MIG ammo and add more color to it, which is what I've done on the floor here. I used a bright or fresh rust wash on top of the dark brown. Oh, there's all kinds of things you can do. This falls under weathering as well. This is the canvas roof that used to be part of the Volkswagen. And because I didn't have all the parts with this Volkswagen, I had to make it myself. So I made a brass frame, and I used polyester resin and just folded it like curtains to build my my roof, and then bent it over like it had fallen inside of the van. But that's just polyester resin. It's a two-part resin, and then it got painted and weathered. Everything in this diorama was rusting away, everything. Even an old battery dripping down here. And this debris on the side here, I thought I'd throw it in just for the hell of it. I went to visit my auto mechanic, and I said to him, "You've got my car. You're doing a brake job for me. Save the the loose rust that comes off the disc." And he did. And I placed it on here and fixed it in place. He said to me, "Be careful how you use this, because you don't want to breathe in the fibers." So, point taken. It's all solid down there. It's not coming off. It's not going anywhere. And I wore a mask when I did it. Again, this is a piece of wire, well, many pieces of wire that I twisted together to form a cable, and then painted it light rust. Actually, it's the wire from an electrical lamp cord. The very fine braided cord inside. I took, I think it was about 8 or 10 strands and wound them together. To make like a towing cable. And the one thing about weathering, it's not just here it is, there's the finished product. This this to me goes into the show that Andy's doing too, the fine scale. every little detail you can think of is going to make your rust job look outstanding. And every little detail I could think of, I stuck in there. This is also part of weathering. This here is balsa strips. I went over them with a stainless steel brush to roughen them up. And then I used a hacksaw blade and I dragged it across the wood grain so that I had deeper grooves, stained it, and then painted it. And what I end up doing, because it's on wood, there's another way of doing it. People think that the hairspray technique works on wood. And some people have had some success with it, but it doesn't lend itself very well to working on wood. Say you have a clapboard siding building that you want to show chipping paint. The best way to do it is to stain it first, like this, the group in the middle, and then soak them in mineral spirits once it's dry. Soak it in mineral spirits, and then paint it with acrylic paint. Once the surface of the acrylic paint loses its shine, you take a piece of Scotch tape, just lay it on and peel it off quickly. Lay it on and peel it off quickly. And what you'll end up with is the way that looks there. You can also use a wire brush afterwards. But if you use a wire brush, you're going to take off more than you need to. So be careful. Then I went back and I just added some dark to where the nails are. And the nails were actually made from solid copper that you get from telephone wire. Add a few holes, make some knot holes and so on. It's endless what you can do. You break out the ends, like at the other end is broken, uneven. And there's that same cable. It's light rust underneath the water, and that water is magic water. And then I painted on top of the bright rust. I painted the dark brown again, so it was lighter underneath where it would be, and if it was in water, that's the way it would be. So there's all the parts, not assembled, but they're all there. So there's and like I say, you can, whatever you can think of to add detail is going to make or break your model, whether it's this sort of thing or whether it's on your layout. I took some old magazines, hot rod magazines, and I shrunk them down to the proper size. I took a photograph of the original van, and this is a scratch-built computer laptop, so I put the picture on the screen to make it look like what the van used to look like. The shopping cart came from a friend of mine. He has a company called Wild Hair Models. He has a lot of photo-etched products. He does O-scale and HO, and he has some beautiful fire escapes if you're looking for it. There's the other side with the front finally on, the window in place. And you can't see it very clearly, but right in the middle there's a hula dancer on the dashboard. I was thinking of a pair of dice, but I don't think the pair of dice would have lasted in a junkyard like this. And of course, being in a junkyard, not everything is still attached to the car, so the back door is just laid inside on the back deck. There's a better picture of the hula dancer. Now, all these pictures so far have been taken inside. the best way to find out any mistakes in your modeling is to take it outside and photograph it in sunlight, and you'll see where the errors are. Well, first off, a camera will do that anyway. If you've missed something, because you're working on it constantly, you want a fresh eye. And if you use the camera will bring out things that you are overlooking because you've been working on it for so long. So there it is outside. Just that little bit of shadow and the bright sunlight just seems to make everything work. Now at the bottom here it's 2 layers of MDF with a Lazy Susan turntable in the center of it. So this the smaller one moves, like the whole thing spins, so that you can turn it around without moving the base. And that's it all put together. And you can see the nails in the fence. And again, just to take a saw blade to the boards to add grain, add some holes for nuts, and work around them with a knife. Okay. So the salt technique, this is going to be fun. Okay. Questions?
Alrighty, let me let's see. First off, where did you go? Oh, Dwight was, is there a good acrylic that is a rust color?
Good question. Just to give you an idea, there's 3 different browns. I don't know whether you can see them.
Yeah. There you go.
3 different colors of brown. I use Tamiya colors because they're easy for me to access because I work at a hobby store. So I have XF79, it's called Linoleum Deck Brown. XF9 is Hull Red. And then Flat Brown. And that's how I got the roof to look sort of modeled, if you want to call it that. I don't know whether you can see it on there, all different colors.
Yeah. Yeah, it's starting to come. Oh, there you go. Whoa. Yeah, we got a light bar kind of shine going across that, but I see different patches, dark and light spots, yeah.
So when you're doing your rust, you don't want it to be all one color. You want it to be patchy.
Yeah.
Okay.
MHO Junction, Lloyd was asking, have you ever used a cracking liquid or anything?
I have, and I don't like it for HO or smaller. For anything bigger is fine, because the problem with the cracking liquid is you can't control the size of the cracks. More than likely are going to get larger cracks, but to scale, they're way out of scale. You want it a lot smaller. So there's ways of doing it other than using a cracking liquid. I've seen guys use white glue, paint the thing with white glue and then paint acrylic on top of it. And as the white glue dries, it cracks the acrylic paint. Don't ask me how or why. It does. Doesn't do it all the time though.
Yeah, Ethanville, which is Matt, he has sea salt or rock salt.
It's your choice. It's your choice. If you can also use iodized kosher salt if you want. It really doesn't matter. I went out with this salt that's in the jar here, before I got that big container of salt, I went and took some rock salt that I put on my my walkway for the wintertime and brought it in and crushed it down a bit.
And Michael says, have you used paint pens?
Paint pens.
Yeah. They're kind of like felt tip pens, but you have to shake them up, you know.
No, I have not. The only ones that I've used are, it's a new product that's out by Ammo. They're called oil brushers. Sure, now it's not going to focus.
Yeah. We can still see what it says. There you go. There it is.
Oil brushers. And this is it's quite interesting the way they've got it. There's a brush inside, and it comes out loaded with the paint. And with this, it's not really meant for painting. It's for spot coloring, and then using mineral spirits to spread it out and drag it down. That's what it's for. But as far as paint pens for painting something, no. I was going to get some for painting my rails, and I don't like the way it looks. I've seen people who've done it, and I don't like the way it looks. So I use my Tamiya paints, and I mix them up in a 50-50 mix, or maybe even 60-40, 60 alcohol, 40% paint, and airbrush my rails and ties. Then go back with every other tie. Every once in a while I'll throw a tie in that has a lighter color. Or you can use the Rust-Oleum spray cans. It's just, if you use the Rust-Oleum spray cans, you better make sure that you have an exhaust fan that's going to exhaust the air outside. Because you'll be painting your rails and indoors, and you're going to get high. Guaranteed. Unless that's what you're looking for. I don't know. Everybody has their own thing.
Yeah, Brian W. said he got new weathering powders and an airbrush from Mrs. Claus, and he was looking forward to this episode.
Okay, and which weathering powders?
Yeah. Dwight said that he didn't get his SD40-2 in museum quality from me for Christmas. Yeah, Dwight, I don't think you've been that good a boy this year. Your wife didn't give you that many accolades. She gave you a lot, but not enough to qualify for museum quality. So maybe next year.
So what type of powders was it that, who was it you said got powders and from Mrs. Claus?
That was Brian W.
Okay, what kind of powders was it, Brian?
Yeah, it'll probably take him a minute to get it in the chat. Matt was saying paint pens are good for graffiti. Michael was the one that's asking about paint pens. And
the one thing I found with paint pens for graffiti, if you're not careful, if you try and go over it to darken it up a bit, it tends to take your first layer off. And you have to get just the right ones. There's certain ones out there, and I can't remember which ones they are now. I have a buddy who does graffiti like crazy, and he swears by this particular product. If I can find out by the next show, I'll let you know which ones they are.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me see. I can make this a little bit bigger. So there, I've got some salt in the lid. And you can see it's not very small granules. It's small enough. It's about the size of kosher salt, I guess. So the idea is to take a spritzer, and there's my bottle. I hope this doesn't go funny on me now, because usually what I do is this has been sprayed with hairspray,
Yeah.
and I usually put a coat of dull coat over it. I didn't do it this time because I just did it just before the show, so we're going to see what happens. But anyway, the idea is to wet it and then add some salt. Come on.
Yeah.
Doesn't want to go.
Of course not. You're doing the show.
That's right. And if you want, you can add a bit more water to encapsulate that. Now, like I said, this is windshield washer from my car. Okay? So, in order to speed things up, I'm dropping stuff all over the floor here. In order to speed things up, I have one that I prepared earlier, like about a week and a half ago. So I hope the paint doesn't, or the tape doesn't take everything off, because I had it covered with masking tape, so the salt doesn't fall off. Just got to get the tape started.
By the way, Matt said he'd appreciate if you get the name of those pins for the graffiti.
Okay. All right, here we go. So this is going to take some of the salt off, which is fine, because at this point I'm going to take it off anyway. But I just wanted it to stay there, because what you do after this dries, you just spray on your base color, the color you want, the roof color. If it's white, if it's blue, if it's green, doesn't matter. Once the windshield washer liquid is dry, then you can add your paint color. So in this case, I added green. This is the same green I put on the Volkswagen, by the way. Okay. Don't need that tape anymore. Get rid of that. Get rid of my excess salt as it goes all over the floor. Isn't that what's supposed to happen?
Yeah.
Okay. So, first of all, just rub with your finger. And then you wet it again.
Probably be able to reuse that.
The salt?
Yeah, that you rubbed off.
Not really, because it's got paint on it and it won't dissolve properly.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So the idea is to get it to dissolve the best possible way. I don't know where my toothbrush is gone. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. And when you do this, it takes some of the paint off too, which is what you want. So there's what you end up with.
Yeah.
You can continue on doing that if you want, or you can leave it as it is. Well, there's the toothbrush. And again, when I paint, I usually, when I'm doing something like this, it's either 60-40 or 50-50 mix of paint. Now you got to make sure you don't scrub too hard, or you're going to scrub right through the rust-colored paint underneath. But that's what you get. It's easy as heck to do, but like I said, it's not the sort of thing that scales down to HO scale properly. You can try and use table salt because it's nice and small, but you're going to find that the granules that leave the dots you're not going to have that same consistency of rust popping through the paint. Okay. Come on, hurry up and dry. Well, out comes the trusty fan again.
Yeah.
Okay, what I can do while I'm waiting for that to dry is I'll just flip this over. And this blue one, the blue paint, has been prepped with the brown as a base coat, hairspray, and then my paint color. So, and I did this literally 15 minutes ago. So you wet it, find yourself a toothpick. You can use the fine part of it, or you can use the heavy part of it. And just move along a little bit until you get something started. There it goes. Oh, it went right through to the white plastic. And if this was on the side of a vehicle, then all your lines or your strokes would be up and down, vertical.
Yeah, I'm starting to see a little bit of brown come through, I think.
Well, the whole idea, the way this works is once the water gets below the surface of the paint, it starts to dissolve the hairspray. And once that happens, I mean, I can even use a paintbrush for that matter. And just sort of scrub it with a paintbrush. That way there's not so much.
I was fixing to ask about the toothbrush.
Like the toothpick, it's a little bit on the aggressive side. You can do it. Just you don't have the same control anymore.
Well, it might work good for, say, getting it started, maybe.
So, if you're going to do this, this works really well on 45-gallon drums. You have a drum that's, oh geez, I had some here. Where the heck did they go? The top and bottom rings are painted the same color, and the middle one is usually white or something like that. You see them two-color drums. Well, there we go. That's working nice. You can do it on the sides of the drums to make them look like they've been abused and knocked around and so on. So that's where this technique would come in handy too.
So that's just water and alcohol that you use to soften the paint
No,
up.
it's just the window washer.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just fixing before you picked that brush up to ask if you use the brush to help feather out the edges.
It does. So if I continue going, I can get it to do the whole thing if I want, but I don't want to do the whole thing. This is where your a little bit of, what do they call it, artistic license takes over. It's up to you how far you want to go with it.
All right, Matt has asked, what does the hairspray do?
It forms a surface for the paint to adhere to, so that it's not directly on the paint layer below. And then once you break through the surface of the top paint, the blue one, it comes in contact with the hairspray. Once the water or moisture comes in contact with the hairspray starts to dissolve, allowing the paint color below to start showing through. So you can get these same effects or something similar to this on the side of a grain car.
Well,
who knows what's been rubbing on it that would cause that sort of thing.
And that was leading me up to the next question of Michael. That was, can you do that effect on the side of box cars?
You can. The thing about the box cars, you have to really look at a prototype photograph when you're working on structures, which is where most of this here would be used, or on like on my model of the Volkswagen. You don't have a prototype to work from, so it's all sort of in your imagination, and you have to be careful, because if your imagination runs wild, you're going to overdo it. That's the one thing that we keep saying is less is more. You've heard that many times before, I'm sure. It actually literally does make sense, because if you tried to do it from your mind and not from a prototype picture, you will overdo it, because you want to do more, and doing more is not going to make it look any better. There's a point where it's great or good, then it's great, and then it starts to go off because you've overdone it.
Yeah, well, now you see why I'm bald-headed, Tom. Sometimes it's hard to keep names straight, so yeah, I got a couple of new people in here, and I thought somebody told me they had an abbreviated name. I remember now, and their name was Matt. Okay, so I'll try and keep it straight best I can, but you may have to remind me one more time on that.
Okay. The next thing, similar to the blue, this green, I did this green literally 5 minutes before the show. The longer you let the paint set, the harder it is to get it off. Now what I did with this one is I have a layer of brown. The brown is still there, but on top of the brown I did hairspray. On top of the hairspray I did white. Then I did hairspray again, and then I did green. So at some point the white is going to break through to the brown. Sure, now that I'm saying it's going to break through, it won't.
Get the
You're
toothpick
right.
out.
Clean off the brush. Start again. Now, one thing you can do, if you're using this technique, you can use the original Windex, but I would be careful because it has ammonia in it, and the Windex tends to cut through the paint nicely. Come on. I didn't put that thick a coat on. Oh, I can start to see brown. There we go. So the idea here was to show that there was 2 layers of paint. Change of color, and then the rust came through. So if this green had been dried just a little bit more, I wouldn't get all this green coming off like it is. But you get the idea.
Alright, so let's just say like this right here, the green's coming off a little too much. So if you just dry that Windex off there, the washer fluid, and let the green dry a little longer and then come back, would you still be...
You got to be careful though, because if you rub it, you're going to take it off with the paper towel as well.
blot it off like you're doing now.
Yeah. Yep.
That way you let the green dry where you can come back. Of course, your white and everything else is drying too, but at least you work a little bit more on the white and not have to worry about the green getting too soft.
So basically, that is dried now, and that's ready for paint. I'm not going to paint it now because I want it to dry a bit more, because what the salt does, some of it dissolves to a liquid, and that's what gives you those blank spots, like down in here, the larger areas. Yeah. So what it ends up, let's see. When it's done, you can come back at it with some powders, and I use aim powders, and that's basically what it looks like. So not only do you have the rust spots that have popped through from because of the salt, but now you add, and I did it with a sponge. I used my gouaches, and a sponge, and it gives you that illusion that the rust is actually bleeding through the paint. Now this basically is if you're going to use or if you paint your own cars from scratch, you would be able to use both of these techniques. Otherwise, save them for your structures. They work best on structures because, well, if you look at the side of a boxcar, now compare that. I can't even do that. There. Compare that to the boxcar. And you can see where some of the finer grain is. That might work in certain areas, like in the white area here of this, or in the lettering, or somewhere in the red, but not a whole lot. But basically, because you can't get the small granules to stay that size without melting, this is why it doesn't scale down.
That dotting effect that you showed last show, that seems to work real well. So, like, especially on that white and on the letters.
Yep. There's some other methods where, and you really have to have patience to do the next one I'm going to tell you. You want to do dots, like you've seen a bunch of coil cars, and I don't even know whether I have a photograph of it now. I should have grabbed it earlier. The coil cars, because they've been knocked around so much, they have these, it's like a protective cover or lid that gets lifted off, and it's half the length of the car. There's two of them usually on the car. They get knocked around so much the paint gets chipped. So they constantly have all these little dots on them, and I tried using a real open bubble type of foam, like this stuff. It sort of works, but not the way I was hoping it would work. So I ended up doing it with a brush, and just dab with the brush to make these little dots. You know, you just dab, you know, and the whole thing, and it was absolutely amazing, or the amount of time it took to do it. So if you don't have to worry about the amount of time it takes, more power to you, because that method comes out the best of all. I'm not sure now if I have a photo of it. And with my luck, I'm going to click on it, and it's going to start up in the wrong program. Okay. So is there anything else on this salt and hairspray?
No, Tom, Etherville, says so it'll work great on silos. I guess you
Yes.
tell about the hairspray.
Yes. Especially one that right around where the most use or traffic comes in contact with the silo, like down around the doors or the hatch at the bottom. That's where you'd get your most wear.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
I hadn't seen anything from Brian W. yet about the brand of weathering powders they got for Christmas.
Here's a waffle side door. It's the car is all doors, and I couldn't I could not for the life of me do the sponge work properly. So that was all done with single dots with a brush. And the prototype photo is almost identical. It's actually heavier than that. But I use all kinds of different colors. This color here that I did that with is life color. And it is Track Dirt UA720. Now the label's wearing off a little bit, but it's life color, it's called. A lot of the guys that do figure painting, like 1/35th scale people and armor and military guys, they use a lot of the life color stuff. So there's the life color. You can see that it's coming off, but it's still there. It's readable. Track Dirt. That's the color. It's a little bit. I guess the easiest way to compare it, it's not milk chocolate color and it's not dark chocolate color. It's in between, like a semi-sweet chocolate. If you know anything about chocolate, maybe your wife does or your girlfriend.
No comment.
No comment. That's how I know. My wife does a lot of baking, so. And there is the coil car I was talking about. So this here, the first one is just streaks. I figured it's a newer piece. The second part is all battered all to hell. So weathering becomes habit forming if you really get into it. And if you really get into it, you have to have patience, or you will develop patience, I guess I could say, because it takes a steady hand and a lot of patience. You got to wait for paint to dry, and I don't do more than 2 or 3 cars at a time because I don't want it to be a production line sort of thing. I want each car to be individual. So I'm using prototype photos. And if I can't get the exact prototype name or road number, or pardon me, road name, I'll find one that looks close to it. And I will use that as a guide. So the bottom part of this car hasn't been done yet because I haven't found a car, but I found a whole series of these covers. And just happened to be when I was taking the commuter train home from work. I used to see these things parked along the side of the rail, the main line. So one day, instead of going straight home, I had my camera with me, a little point and shoot camera, and I went and took pictures of these things. So I haven't done the bottom part because I was more concerned about getting the tops. And what ends up happening is you may have 2 different road names on the same car. The box cover or the the coil cover will be different. This one may be blue, maybe Conrail, and the other one's Milwaukee Road, or UP and Milwaukee Road, or all kinds of different variations. Okay. There was one other thing I was going to show you before I leave for tonight. Where did it go now? There we go. Another Volkswagen. After doing the first one, I had to do another one, and both these kits, when I got them, were part kits. They weren't complete. So this one here, the last one, by the way, the junkyard one, I entered it in a IPMS competition. IPMS is International Plastic Model Society, and I took first place in 2 different competitions. So the boss at the store said, "So Ralph, how are you going to better yourself now?" And I thought long and hard. It took me almost a year to come up with this concept. I found this van. It was on the shelf. It didn't have window glass. And I thought, wow, I don't know, what am I going to do? So I thought of Mad Max sort of thing, into the future, beyond Mad Max. So I decided I'm gonna make it a hover van. So I closed in the wheel wells with checker plate.
You're not screen sharing.
Oh, all right. Sorry. There we go. So I closed in the wheel wells with checker plate plastic, styrene. I put extra reinforcing on the top edges here. This used to be a camper van. This whole section from there to the back used to lift up. So I reinforced this section in here with checker plate, and then I went to town on it. I didn't have any window glass, so I figured, well, what can I do? I'm not going to use acetate because there's too many compound curves and so on. So I ended up making these bars on the outside like you would see in Mad Max. And I made it for the side windows as well. Closed all the other windows in. And then I wrote a letter. This is a Revell model kit. So I wrote a letter to Revell and asked them if I could buy the decals that they have for, or decals that they have for one of their models. It was a Volkswagen bus similar to the last one I showed you. But it was a van. And it was a Jägermeister van. So I figured, well, no, I got to have those decals. So I bought them from them. I made this little platform for the top. I added a little bit of steampunk to it. There's the Jägermeister colors. Started to rust it. This here comes down from the stuff I'm going to put on top. It has the piping that goes down, one to each wheel. Excuse me. And I had a little cylinder shaped thing underneath each wheel. There's the inside of it that this wood paneling came with the van. Everything else is scratch built to go inside. Checker plate on the floor, and there's one of the wheel pods that I put in. And I literally had this thing hovering. Oh, sorry. How did that get in there? I don't know. There's the steampunk stuff I put on the top with an air conditioning unit on the front. Have no idea what these represent, but they fit on there, and I didn't rust them, I aged them because I painted them a copper color. And in that photograph, that thing is floating above the base. I used electromagnets And you can see this little black thing under here is an electromagnet. It's about a 2-inch diameter. There's an electromagnet in the base that corresponds with it, and it forces it to stay up. And I thought to myself, I took this to a competition as well. And what ended up happening was, because they didn't have power on the table where my category was, I was right in the middle of the auditorium floor. I went to the organizers and I said, I need power for my display. Oh yeah, okay, put it at the end there, take power from one of the vendors that's sitting there. So I did that, and they said, well, we'll make sure you don't get missed. So it never got judged because they forgot all about it. So it still hasn't been judged. It's a year old now. And this is just done with some of the MIG ammo stuff, the oil stains on the ground. The base is all styrene. So after not being judged the first time, when I entered the second time, I borrowed, because it's a 12-volt power supply that operates the electromagnet, I borrowed my son's motorcycle battery. So I changed the shape of the base slightly so that I could incorporate the battery inside. So there it is, and that's floating. I ended up getting second place. That truck right behind me is what took first place. Now, if I was to do this again, I would raise these up a little bit higher so you can actually see that it's hovering. I had to write on the contest entry form on the that sits underneath the base, yes, it's really hovering. And it was only the little kids that were at eye level that actually saw it hovering. There's the truck. When it comes down to fine detail, and I'm a stickler for fine detail. Not that it's sour grapes, but I think this guy is a local race car driver, and that may be why he won first place, because the finish on this, you could see it here, the shine is like the surface of an orange, and in a competition like this, that sort of thing doesn't even get judged, but it did. It's okay. So there we have it. So next time, I was going to take, since we're all doing railroading stuff, and I don't know whether you can see the rock work that's in behind me, that is what I'm going to show you how to paint. And to me, that goes along with the weathering, because it's not just painting it, you have to make it look like it's real. And that's the whole idea of weathering, to make it look like it's real, not a toy. So on that note, I will say thank you for watching, and come back next time.
All right, this goes back to the dotting method with the brush. Tom or Ethanville said, they say I have a lot of time on my hands. You, sir, beat me on that dot painting, LOL. Then he goes, what about 10 hours to dot that car out?
That might work. Maybe less. You might be able to, yeah, that'll work for sure.
Yeah. All right, Ralph, I appreciate you coming in and doing the show. I know this one was a rough one because you kind of coming down with a little bit of a cold. Your throat, you said, was starting to bother you pretty good. So, We appreciate that, and everybody's been saying it's a good show. So let's change the splash page here. Okay, there we go. Want to say go to YouTubeModelBuilders.com. There you can check the schedules for the shows. We have the Tuesday, Wednesday shows. Those are at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. The Thursday show is also 9 o'clock Central, 10 o'clock Eastern Time. And while you're there at YouTubeModelBuilders.com, be sure and click on the eMag. There you can enter your email address so that when the magazine comes out, you can be notified. The next issue will be in January. So you want to be sure and sign up for that so you get notified so you can download it. Just like anything else we do, the eMag is free along with all the shows that we do. I want to say thank you for coming in tonight. Tomorrow night we've got Into the Locomotive Shop. That will also be at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. That'll be with Joe. Barry's teching that show. So we'll have a good show there. And Thursday night will be the Johnny Model Train Talk show. So we shall see you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Central, 9 o'clock Eastern Time. Appreciate you coming in. Hope everybody had a good Christmas. So we'll see you tomorrow night. Goodbye.
Night, John.
Bye.